Thanks very much. Good morning, members, and welcome to the Licensing and the Licensing Board. It's 15th of September 2023, 10:30 a.m. just starting. So we've got Sarah apologies and convener's approval of the members' remote participation. Before we do anything, I'll agree that. So members' remote participation, obviously there's been a remote meeting. It's fundamental to the business function and going forward. We normally have a script as well in regards to, I would say at this point, in regards to our methodology, right speak, so on and so forth, but I think we're all comfortable with that and understand that, so we'll skip that. So straight to said and apologies. Carolyn, I think that's for you.
Thank you, convener. We have apologies from Councillor Karen Carruthers, and if I may, I'd just like to, with your approval, convener, just go through a wee roll call just to ensure that members are present and can hear me okay. So obviously yourselves there, and Councillor Dryborough, I can see that you're present. Yep. Councillor Jameson?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor?
Here.
Thank you. And morning. And Councillor Thompson?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Members, just before the meeting started, I have to leave. I mentioned to Councillor Dryborough, who's happy to take over for a little while from myself. Round about 11 o'clock, I have to leave the meeting for about 20 minutes. So looking at the workload we've got today, it'll go beyond that point in time. But obviously we'll take it as it goes. So I'll convene the meeting up to the nearest appropriate agenda item, up till 11 o'clock. Then I'll leave the meeting for about that 20 minutes time, and then I'll come back in, and depending where the business is at that point, what the next convenient appropriate point, I'm sure Archie will let me back in. Then, if the members are okay with that, which I'm sure he will be. Excellent, members. So declarations of interest. Are any members of any declarations of interest? Take that as a no. Thank you very much. Minute of the meeting, 26th of May 23. Members got any points of accuracy they'd like to raise? Or can we agree that as a minute? An accurate minute, I should say. Agree that. None. Okay, thank you. Item number 4 is application for occasional licences and extended hours granted on a delegated authority. Reports by yourself, Caroline. Caroline, anything you'd like to mention or add in regards to this report for members' consideration?
No, convener, it's just for noting. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, happy to note?
Yeah, happy.
Yeah, happy.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. Item 5 is application for minor variations granted under delegated authority. Again, Caroline, anything to add here? No.
Just for noting, convener.
Thank you. Members?
Noted.
Happy to note, thank you. Item number 6 is application for transfer of premise licence granted under delegated authority as well. Caroline, I'm sure. Okay with yourself? Yep. You're on mute there, but I read your lips.
Thank you. Yeah, just for noting, convener.
Yeah, thank you. Members?
Noted.
Noted,
Thank
yeah.
you. Excellent, thank you. Item number 7 is surrender premises licence. Report by the clerk to the board. Members got any points in this I'd like to raise? Nope. Take that as noted then.
Yep.
Item number 8, confirmation of premise licence. Confirmation of premises licence. Again, report to the clerk of the board. Maybe should I give you the chance to come in again, Caroline, just in case. I should have done that with the last one as well. Anything you'd like to make us aware of? Just everything. You feel everything is in order here?
Just for noting, convener. Thank you.
Yeah. Members, you okay with that? Just to note?
Yeah, happy with that.
Thank you. Well, Zoom. Thank you. Thanks, members. This is quite expedient to say the least. Application for variation of premise licences back to the buck. 82A High Street, Annan. Which statement 36, Caroline? Anything you'd like to make us aware of?
Thank you, convener. I believe that we have a Sharon Willisey attending. Just wanting to check Ms Willisey is present and can hear me okay. Sharon Willisey, are you present and can you hear me okay to speak to your application?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
So members, this is an
Hello.
application. I'll proceed to read through the reports with a suggested procedure. Convener, thank you. So members, this is an application for a major variation in respect of the premises back to the buck. And we have Sharon Willisey present with us this morning. The application was received on the 30th of May 2023. It's detailed at Appendix 1 to this report. I can confirm that the team's gone through the statutory consultation process, and the display dates for the site notice were the 9th of June to the 1st of July 2023, and signed confirmation of site notice has been received, and notice of the application has also been displayed on the web page in accordance with those dates. The last dates for objections and representations was the 30th of June 2023, and I can confirm that no objections or representations have been received. The LSO report advises no adverse comments at Appendix 2, and the Police Scotland also advised no adverse comments. So in terms of suggested procedure, Convener, you may just wish to hear from the LSO and then hear from Ms Willisey, the applicant, followed possibly by members' questions, and thereafter give Ms Willisey an opportunity to sum up and before going into session. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning.
Thanks very much.
Convener.
Sharon, you're fine. What we'll do, we'll go to the LSO first, the Licensing Standards Office. You take
Okay.
the LV to give a presentation. Thanks.
Thanks,
Does the LSO have any comments?
Julia Farrell, Licensing Standards Officer,
Julia,
attending
thanks, Julia.
today. Just as my report states, the variation is to seek a licence to the upper floor, which has been renovated to create an additional bar and function area. It has been operating by occasional licences without issues. Other changes, there's no adverse comments from myself. They're all in line with the policy.
Thanks so much for that. So the group of people enter the next room, the room next to us. I had to leave just for a wee second before that's the way the camera went off. Members, I'll give you a chance to. Well, I'll let Sharon do her piece first. Then you can come in at either Sharon's or Julia's actual presentation. Yep, I think everything seems to be in order. Sharon, over to you, just to do a presentation if you'd wish in regards to support your application.
Yeah, we're hoping, our main thing is we're hoping to be able to put food onto a menu to just widen what we're doing. The middle floor gives us extra space so that we can do functions, birthdays, that kind of thing. And it just gives us another way of making some more money. The food thing is very important to us, and it joins both floors together, which makes them more viable. We've been open with occasional licences since November last year and have managed not had a problem with anything, and we will make sure that continues in the future.
Thanks so much for that, Sharon. Thank you. Members, any questions for Sharon for this one? Councillor Driver and Archie?
Yeah, no so much questions here, more a comment. Obviously the Back to the Buck's been running for a long time now. Didn't seem to have any problems here anymore. And I would when we go into session, I'll be supporting this.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Jimison, George?
Yeah, I haven't got any great issues. It sounds like a good idea, and I'm really encouraged by the fact that you want to expand the food and family. But my only question is, and it's my old pet fear is underage drinkers and also the adult entertainment. What does the adult entertainment cover? And I know it's quite difficult with young people, but what extra special resources do you put in place to ensure that there's no young folk that are underage getting into the premises, or getting into the premises when they're not supposed to be?
If we have the middle floor on and it's something geared up for the younger ones, we immediately put bouncers on. The middle floor always has bouncers on, and anybody under 25, we're religious about it. We are downstairs as well, but more so up the stairs because it's not good for our reputation and it's not good for business. The adult entertainment was purely because we were told that if we had like a hen party on and they had suggestive straws or anything along them lines, then we would need that on the licence. That is as far as the adult entertainment goes. Annan's a small place. If you start letting youngsters, underagers in, it soon gets round the place and it does you more harm than good. So I am very religious about the underagers.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent. That's very reassuring. Good for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you, George. Don't see anybody else coming in. I always think it's a good sign when you've run with occasional licences for as long and there's been no adverse comments from our LS, so it's a good sign. Or the police for that matter. Sharon, you've already done a presentation, you've answered questions, but just give you the option, just in case you want to add anything else. It's something I would normally do. It's up to you.
We've worked really, really hard to get it was originally the Buck. We've worked really, really hard over the last 3 years odd to get this back running. I mean, it's been here for 300 years. There was a time there that we thought it wasn't going to survive. And what we are after here with this licence is the final piece to really make it financially viable, to keep it going, hopefully, for another good long few years.
Thanks so much for that, Sharon. Members, Councillor Driver put forward a proposal earlier. Do you want to reiterate that, Archie? Yep.
Yeah, we've got a choice either to grant or refuse the application, Chair. I think we need to grant the application because of what we've heard today and what's in the report.
Members agreed with that? Comfortable with that, I think, after the reassurances that we've had, along with the presentation? Excellent. Agreed. Caroline, I wonder if you could just outline the decision that we've made, and that lets Sharon away.
Thank you, Convener. So, Ms Willesee, the board today has granted your application in its entirety and you will be notified in writing in early course with an amended licence on its way to you in early course. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Honestly, thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks very much for your time today as well. It's up to you. You can stay or you can leave. You're welcome to
That's
do either.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Item number 10 is application for provisional premises licence. It's Tesco Express,
Sharon
20 Bruce
Willesee
Street. Look.
Is now exiting.
Right, so application for provisional premises licence, Tesco Express, 20 Bruce Street, Lochmaben. Caroline, I wonder if I could ask you just to outline the same as you did last time in the process and who's speaking, please.
Thank you, Convener. I believe we have an Abby Hunter from Pinsent Mason. I can see Ms Hunter on the screen. Ms Hunter, can you just advise who you have alongside with you today in relation to this application?
Thank you very much. With me today I have Hardish Purawal, the head of the UK licensing team and senior licensing manager, and also Jane Young, who is the operations support partner for the local area.
Thank you. So members, this is an application for a provisional premises licence in respect of Tesco Express, Bruce Street in Lochmaben. The application was received on the 19th of June 2023. The team have gone through the statutory consultation process. I can confirm that the Section 50 provisional planning certificate and also the disabled access and facilities statement have been received. In terms of the site notice, I can confirm that the display dates were the 30th of June to the 22nd of July 2023 and signed confirmation of site notice has been received. Notice of the application was also displayed on the board's web page for the same period. The last date for objections and representations was the 21st of July 2023. No objections or representations have been received. The LSO report, the application itself, details of the application may be found at the appendix, and the LSO report advising no adverse comment is detailed at Appendix 2. We also received a clear police report. In terms of suggested procedure, Convener, you may wish to hear from the LSO and then allow Ms Hunter to speak on behalf of her client as to the application, and thereafter any possible questions from yourselves. thereafter allow Ms Hunter to sum up, and then I would perhaps go into session. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. That's exactly the process that we'll use. And so it's for yourself first and Julie as LSO.
Thanks, convener. I've really nothing to add to my report. It's fairly straightforward and I've got no adverse comments.
Thank you very much for that. Members, will give you a chance to come back and ask questions of Julie if required after we've allowed. I think it's Abby. Are you speaking on behalf of the applicant here? So it's yourself and Abby. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Good morning, Your Honours. As I've said, Hardish Purawal is with me today, who is the UK licensing team head and also the senior licensing manager. In that role, Hardish is involved in all aspects of alcohol retailing, from training for 280,000 UK staff to compliance, and also working with the government on policy. Hardish is the chair of the Retail of Alcohol Standards Group, and she works closely with enforcement authorities and has built excellent relationships through this partnership working. And she's also the board of the Community Alcohol Partnerships, which works with local partnerships to reduce underage drinking. Jane Young, that is with us, is the operations support partner for the area, and she'll be able to answer any local questions should there be any from the board. In terms of the application, Your Honours, given that we're at an early stage of the development process, the designated premises manager hasn't yet been confirmed, but it will likely be an existing Tesco colleague who's already an experienced premises manager and also a personal licence holder, but that will be confirmed at a confirmation stage. In terms of the premises themselves, it is 20 Bruce Street in Lochmaben, and that is a high street location which would operate as a small supermarket retailing food and non-food items and household goods, but would also offer ancillary consumer services, which would include home deliveries. You may be familiar with the service Whoosh, which Tesco offers, which is essentially a home delivery service, but on a far quicker basis, and that can be for last minute meals, for example, or essential items. The store itself will be at ground floor level with storage and staff facilities at the rear, and the areas that are to be used for the display of alcohol are to the left of the entrance and also to the rear of the store, and there will also be a small inaccessible display area behind the kiosk for spirits. In terms of the capacity of the off sales, this makes up approximately 15% of the store. In terms of the store, it's proposed that will create around 20 to 30 new jobs, and that there will also be a minimum of 3 personal licence holders based at the store, including the premises manager. The proposed opening hours are 6 AM to 11 PM with the statutory licence hours, and this is with a targeted opening date of March 2025. You'll have seen the disabled access and facilities statement, and the entrance to the store is directly from Bruce Street with a ramp to its main doors to enable disabled access to the premises, and the aisles are going to be wide enough to allow disabled access around the store. Doors and emergency exits provide enough space also for those with a disability to enter next to the premises, and there will be toilet facilities available. There's some other measures also set out in that statement, which do include, for example, in-store quiet hours, and also being able to put larger text on self-service checkouts. I'm pleased to note that there are no adverse comments from the LSO or the police, and in terms of the objectives, I also note the Licensing Standards Officer has noted that the proposed display of alcohol is not excessive. In terms of training of staff, I'd like to point out that Tesco invests heavily in staff training and shares its training with neighbouring stores, and they encourage their operators to operate a best practice, and obviously Hardish's experience also facilitates that. When a new member of staff begins their employment at Tesco, they receive induction training and they're taught through the training, and then there's an online course that can be completed before the colleagues start. There's in-store training and also a buddying system, and there's ad hoc refresher training where a manager deems it appropriate. But nonetheless, there is twice yearly refresher training. It doesn't just cover the nuts and bolts of the law, but it goes over the practicalities of how colleagues might address underage sales, and also how they might deal with difficult customers, for example. Alcohol can't go through checkouts without an action being taken, and when alcohol is scanned, there's a checkout prompt that reminds the cashier to think of the Challenge 25 policy and to confirm whether that customer is over 18. And there's also a date of birth alert to help. Understand that managers would also be able to add messages to checkout so that a team can read it before they start their shift. As I've said, Challenge 25 is in operation, but there will also be CCTV in store at the beer, wines and spirits and checkouts, and also at the interest, and the practice for that would be to keep that for 31 days. So in terms of meeting the objectives, I would submit that Tesco will be providing up-to-date training and supervision of staff. They have the CCTV, and there is responsible management of the premises. They're willing to cooperate with the police and the LSO, and there is the disabled access and facilities. Just also in addition, which may be of interest, is that Tesco Express strives to be part of a community, and as with all their other stores, this store would partner up with local groups and help them to support a community board at the front of their store. So there may be projects that are of particular importance or interest when the store opens, and the Tesco Express will help local schools, for example, or nurseries, food banks, etc. And they'll also support a Tesco chosen national charity. I think obviously Tesco and the different models of stores that they have are well known. This is a tried and tested model, and there's already robust measures in place for other stores that will be adopted here. And subject to any questions that the councillors may have, I would move grant of this application.
Thanks very much for that, Abby. Members, I'll give the two local members to Lochmaben in particular, Councillor McGregor and Thompson. I don't know if you have got any particular points or questions in regards to this.
Nothing specific, Ian. I think that Abby's covered pretty much everything, and I'm very aware of the training that staff get as well. My son did it a number of years ago and still has it on his CV, so I'm quite familiar with the process. So no, nothing to add or ask.
Thanks, Gail. Is that, I can see a hand, can't see who it is. I take it, is that you, Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, convener.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously this development's been sort of well trailed in Lochmaben, and obviously it's Tesco now that are taking it forward. I was just sort of wondering, in terms of home deliveries, what's your approach to dealing with purchase of alcohol and delivery to homes, if you see what I mean? So it's almost like off sales in that respect, just to protect against young people getting access to alcohol that way.
Would you like me to answer that one? Abby, you happy me answering
I don't mind,
that one?
just that's fine,
Yes,
just
that's fine.
whoever's able to answer that. Thank you.
So from an express, we would have what's called our whoosh delivery, and so at the doorstep there's a Think 25 check done at the doorstep, so their alcohol's identified if that's what's in the basket, and then there's a check done at the doorstep. So if anybody who looks under 25 can't prove they're over 18, then that delivery gets taken back to the store.
Thank you. And so presumably that training goes not just for in-store staff, but also delivery drivers as well?
Yeah, I've personally seen so anybody that we use, any third party that we use, as well as our own teams, I review the training to make sure that it's as robust as what we would use in Tesco.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thanks so much for that, Hardish. No other questions for yourself, Abby? So just for yourself, as the representing the applicants, Abby, if you've got anything you'd like to add or not, it's completely up to yourself, then we'll make a decision thereafter.
Thank you, convener. I don't have anything further to add to that.
Thanks so much for your presentation. Members, very comfortable with this. Councillor McGregor's, I think, has already outlined that as well. Councillor.
Yeah, happy with this, the grant, Chair. No issues at all with this one.
Thank you. Caroline, could you outline our decision, please?
Thank you, Convener. Can you just confirm the decision on behalf of the board to me, first of all, Convener, if you don't mind? Thank you.
I will do absolutely to approve this. Yep.
Thank you, Convener. So, Ms Hunter, the board has granted your application today in its entirety, and you'll be notified in early course in writing. Thank you.
I'm obliged.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for staying on there. And you're welcome to either stay or leave. It's up to yourselves. I'm sure you'll have important things to do and get on with. Thank you. Right, I'm just taking a note of the time, members, if I can see it somewhere. It's 10:56. I'll tell you, I'll just see if I can, I'll just, no, I'll maybe I'll start this one, Archie, and just see how we get on. So again, as agreed earlier, Archie's got to take over. So it's application.
Sorry, Convener, may I just interject there? Advice would
100%.
be either you stay for this whole item as convener and see it through, or alternatively, Councillor Drybrough steps in from the outset. I don't think it'd be good for you to actually just kind of change midway through this item. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
Excellent. Archie, are you comfortable taking over now?
Yeah, I can take over now, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that.
Okay.
Thanks for the
So
advice
we're on
as
item
well.
11 then, which is the application for a new premise licence, Quartergate 5, Butt Street, Annan, report by the clerk to the boards. Caroline, will you take us through this?
Thank you, Convener. I believe that we have Mr. Mike Taylor, the applicant, with us today. Mr. Mike Taylor, I can see you. Can you confirm that you can hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, members, this is an application for a new premises licence in respect of Quarter Cake Cafe Bar and Restaurant at Butt Street in Annan. The application was received on the 19th of July 2023. The team went through the statutory consultation process. I can confirm that Section 50 certificates for planning, building standards, food hygiene have been received, as well as the disabled access and facilities statement. Notice of the application was published on the board's webpage on Friday the 28th of July 2023 to Saturday the 19th of August 2023. However, in terms of the site notice display, there are 2 errors. So you've been asked as a preliminary point, I'll explain those errors to you. You do retain the legal power to require redisplay of the site notice for a further 21-day period. Now, if you require a further redisplay, clearly this will put back Mr. Taylor's application to another hearing date. For any reason, you can require redisplay of the site notice, or alternatively, once Mr. Taylor gives you the reasons for the errors in the site notice display, you can proceed to determine his application today. At paragraph 2.5 of the report, you will note the 2 errors are as follows. The confirmation of site notice itself stated the display dates of the 28th of July to the 19th of August, but it was signed in advance of those dates because it was signed on the 28th of July. And you'll note that the LSO report detailed Appendix 2 at paragraph 4.1. You may wish to hear from Julia, our LSO here, members, that a visit was made to the premises on the 2nd of August, at which the notice was not displayed, but apparently after speaking to a staff member, the notice was put in the window on Butts Street. So the site notice should have been displayed for the full 21-day period from the 28th of July to the 19th of August, and should have been signed. The confirmation should have been signed on or after the 19th of August. But on the 2nd of August, there was no site notice up. So you may just wish at this juncture, convener, to hear from Julia, the LSO, in respect of her visit, and then hear from Mr. Taylor the reasons for the error, and then make a determination as to whether you wish the site notice to be redisplayed or whether you just wish to crack on and hear the application today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. Julia, can we get your report on this?
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, well, just as stated in my report, a visit was made on the 2nd of August when the notice should have been displayed from the 28th. It was noted it wasn't displayed at that point. However, on speaking to a staff member, it was immediately displayed and rechecked on the 3rd of August, and it was displayed correctly at that point. Obviously, there was only a few days lost. The rest of the time it was up, and it was also on the board's website during the whole 21-day period.
Thank you, Julia. Mr. Taylor, do you want to just give us the reason for this?
Yeah, I'd like to apologise for the site notice confusion there. We had taken the site notice down to the cafe prior to the date of display and asked a trusted member of staff to display it on the Friday, the 28th of July. In hindsight, we should have waited on site until it was implemented, or in fact, put the site notice up ourselves. We hadn't realised it hadn't gone up. We did. We were assured by a staff member it would go up on that date. Obviously, since then the LSO had arrived and it wasn't displayed. Obviously, they had it on location and displayed it immediately. And I can say that it was displayed from then, the full 3 weeks, from the 2nd of August to the 23rd of August. The other error was, obviously, I had my miscommunication. I had signed the form in advance, just didn't understand the routine there, and she was signed afterwards and hadn't changed the dates to the actual correct dates of display, opposed to the dates that it was on the notice board prior to that. So we really apologise for the error there, and thoroughly wish we had done that correctly.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions?
Not for Mr. Taylor, no.
Yep. George?
Yeah, I'm very keen that this goes ahead, obviously, because it's got a good reputation. It encourages families, etc., etc. My one query is there's obviously, and you've noted this in your application, that there's going to be children of all ages are going to be either in or outside the area. You've already mentioned you'd have a bit of an issue with a staffing problem with your notice. I'm really keen to get reassurance that all your staff will be fully trained in all aspects, especially with young people and children. Clearly, that's in your interest as well as your clients. So I'm quite interested to see what induction and continuous training you'll have for your staff regarding alcohol.
Before you answer that, Mr. Taylor, Caroline wishes to come in.
No,
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jameson. At this point, we're just addressing the preliminary point as to whether you wish redisplay of the site notice or not. Okay. If you make that determination and give reasons, that will, if there's a redisplay of the site notice, then there is no item to consider today, and it will call a different hearing in the future, or whether you wish the site notice, you're happy to crack on today. So we're just addressing the preliminary point at this juncture, Councillor. Thank you.
No bother, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Mr. Taylor, we'll come back to that later on if we take this forward. Gail?
Yeah, it's maybe just a question for Caroline, actually. It's number 4, responses. Police Scotland, it says clear notice. I assume that means that they're quite happy for the notice to be cleared. It's maybe just the phraseology.
All right, that clear notice is nothing to do with the site notice, Councillor. The clear notice means that the police have run checks on the applicant and can advise and confirm that there's no convictions for any relevant or foreign offences. So the terminology there may not be helpful in this instance. No. There is a clear report from the police.
Okay, so it's just that, yeah. It's just that in the previous report it said clear report, and that was a report, and this is actually a notice, and it says clear notice. I've just misconstrued that slightly, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I'm keen to move this forward, and I don't think we need to re-advertise. So, yeah. Has anybody got any different opinion to that?
No, I'm happy with that, Archie.
Caroline, can we get the decision of the board?
Okay, Convener, so you've just confirmed that you're happy to crack on today and not require redisplay of the site notice for the reasons given by Mr. Taylor. So in that respect, I'll just briefly say it is an application for a new premises licence. The application, the details of that application may be found at the appendix, and you have the LSO report at appendix 2. So you, in terms of suggested procedure, you may wish to hear from the LSO, and then after hear from Mr Taylor, the applicant, to speak to his application with any possible questions from yourselves, then allow Mr Taylor an opportunity to sum up his position before going into session. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Gillian. Julia?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, just you'll probably be well aware of these premises anyway, and that they have been operating for a considerable amount of time. By the use of occasional licences, we've not had any issues at all with the premises from an LSO perspective. In terms of the training, all non-personal licence holder staff will have to do the required mandatory staff training, and as an LSO, we will obviously ensure that that's done and that we're happy with that. So nothing further to add other than I've no other comments.
Thanks, Julia. Members, any questions for Julia? No? Okay, Mr Taylor, it's on to you then, and then perhaps you can maybe reassure Councillor Jamieson with what he actually asked before as well.
Yeah, thank you, members. So just like to come in a position, we are applying for first-time premises licence for Quartercake Cafe, Bar and Restaurant in Annan. The historic building of Quartercake, once part of the sheep market, one of the oldest buildings in Annan, which was sadly derelict for a few decades, has been brought back to life, serving daily breakfasts and lunches along with coffees, cakes, soft drinks and a small selection of alcoholic drinks. On the weekend, it also opened for evening meals Friday and Saturday, and hopefully this can build at some point to weekly meals. Quartercake has seating inside and out and can also cater for small private functions, being a great addition to the town, providing locals and many tourists with a new offering whilst providing good jobs and careers. Quartercake opened in March 2020 for 5 days before the initial COVID closure. Then opening when permitted, traded through COVID and successfully beyond, being open now for 3 years and 6 months. During this time, we've had 89 occasional licences, which I'd like to thank the Licence Department for all their patience and assistance, and the LSO for our report, which details our opening hours are within Annandale and Eskdale Licensing Board policy. Since 2020, we have operated throughout professionally and without issue. We have no adverse comments from the LSO and the police, as you've heard. All staff have been trained from the outset, right from the beginning. Initially by myself, I've experienced previous licences in the management of several retail stores and have licenses for those, and conducted the training. We have documented training records, and refusal seats are implemented, and we thoroughly enforce the 25 rule. Obviously, all children are, in our premises are usually with adults. We don't tend to get any younger members on their own, but if we do thoroughly enhance the over 25 rule. The alcohol licence enhances our offering, and we would rely on it to trade. We rely on it to trade as we do, to provide the local customers and tourists an enhanced experience and the staff, the jobs and the careers that we do. I'd like to thank you for your time and your consideration today, and I hope that you will grant the application.
Thank you, Mr Taylor. George, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, more than happy. That's really reassuring, and I do agree that it's a big step up from the sheep market. It's but joking apart, it was in that area was in danger of like a lot of places now and getting a wee bit run down. So, all power to you. I always want a reassurance that staff are trained and they're not put in an uncomfortable position, or the people, the clientele. But I'm reassured with your experience that that'll be taken care of. So thank you.
Thank you, George. Members, any other questions for Mr Taylor?
No, all good. Convener.
Mr Taylor, it's your turn to just sum up then, if you wish to.
Okay, just in summary, we would hope that you would grant this new premises licence application for Quartercake Cafe, which has added variety to Annan's hospitality offerings, and we believe is traded with occasional licences without any issue for 3.5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr Taylor. Members, we're now in session, so we can either grant or not the application. I'm suggesting we grant it.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Caroline, can you confirm the decision of the panel?
Thank you, convener. So Mr Taylor, you've just heard from the board and they've agreed unanimously to grant your application for a new premises licence. You will be notified of that decision in early course with your premises licence on its way to you in early course also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Mr Taylor. You know, you want to go, you can go. You need to sit through the rest of this. Thank you very much. Ian, are you back? Okay, then we'll go into 12 then, which is Licence Scotland Act 2005, Section 9, the Annual Functions Report 22-23, report by the Clerk of the Boards. Caroline, do you want to take us through this?
Thank you, convener. You're just being asked to approve the draft functions report detailed at the appendix for publication. Happy to take any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Any members, any questions on the annual functions report? If not, are we happy to approve it then?
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I think that's everybody, Caroline, so happy to approve that one. Yeah, so that's approved, Caroline, yeah.
Thank you, convener, noted.
We'll then go on to item 13 then, which is section 9, the annual financial report by the Clerk of Boards. I'm presuming this is for approving as well.
That's correct, convener. You've been asked to approve it for publication, the annual financial report. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions on this one?
No, not specific. I mean, the training and development budget seems quite low, Caroline, given the complexities of licensing. It's only £424 for the year. How many people does that cover?
I'll defer to Sharon Davidson, our licensing manager, if I may, Councillor.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councillor McGregor. We don't have a training and development budget as such, but obviously, as you alluded to there, because of the complexities of the legislation, any necessary development that's required for staff, you know, it has to be undertaken. We do obviously, I mean, Caroline as a trained solicitor has to make sure that she complies with the CPD requirements. So yeah, we just deal with it. It'll fluctuate year to year because we don't really know what's kind of coming up, but we manage it within our current budget.
No, that's fine. So it's more specific training, probably updating various bits of legislation rather than CPD for everybody that works in.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. You happy with that, Gail?
Yes, very much so.
Thank you very much. So are we happy to approve the report?
Happy to approve.
Yeah, thank you. Caroline, that's it.
That's approval is noted, convener. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally on to item 14 is section 6 and 7 renewal licence policy statement and duty to assess over provision. So I'll hand over to you, Caroline, on this one.
Thank you, convener. I just want to ensure that we have NHS, Dumfries and Galloway, Chris Allen and George Noakes with us and that they can hear me loudly and clearly. I can see Mr Allen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. So, members, this report refers to renewal of the licensing policy statement with the duty to assess over provision. Your current policy statement covers 2018 to 2023. You are obliged to review it and have a new one published no later than 4th of November 2023. I can appreciate there's a lot of information here, convener. So my thoughts are, in order to kind of like to deal with the volume of information here, if you can confirm, are you happy for me to kind of like split it in two parts to deal with the policy statement and the policy stuff, and thereafter perhaps go to the recommendations, which are detailed at page 81, paragraph 5, and go through the recommendations for consideration by yourselves, and then bring in the NHS Dumfries and Galloway representatives, Mr Allen and Mr Noakes, to speak to over provision and deal with all provisions separately.
Yeah, that's fine, Caroline. You carry on that way. I think that's a good way.
Yeah, thank you. So, at a conjoint meeting this year, 19th of January 2023, members agreed a consultation programme with regard to renewal of the licensing policy statement, and those who were consulted are detailed at Appendix 1. We undertook an initial consultation which was informal from the 31st of January to the 28th of February 2023, and that was just to seek the public's general views on the terms of the new policy statement. You received one generic response from Alcohol Focus Scotland in respect of all 4 boards. That's detailed at Appendix 2. Then a second consultation was undertaken from the 1st of April to the 15th of June 2023, asking more specific questions in policy areas. It was a bit more detailed consultation, and in respect of responses received, the LSO response in respect of all 4 boards is detailed at Appendix 3 to this report. Alcohol Focus Scotland submitted the same response again, that generic response, which is detailed at Appendix 2. And all 4 boards collectively received 46 responses from the public throughout the region. In respect of your board, a total of 5 responses were received. Questions that were asked were in relation to licensed hours, which you'll see at paragraph 4.7 of the report, asking whether you think current licensed hours are okay, not long enough or too long. And 4 out of the 5 persons who responded were of the view that they were okay. The consultation also asked in relation to outdoor drinking areas. You recall that you do not have a policy in respect of outdoor drinking areas, that you determine each case on its own merits, which gives great flexibility. So, for example, if you're dealing with outdoor drinking area requests for perhaps rural occasions, rural areas whereby you've got a hotel in the middle of a rural area, and then you've got a wee bit more of an urbanised area, there's flexibility. You'll deal with each case in its own merits. So the consultation paper asked whether the board should have a policy in outdoor drinking areas, and 4 persons said yes and 1 person said no. There's a lot there on the outdoor drinking areas, members, and of course you received a response from the LSO in respect of outdoor drinking areas detailed at Appendix 3. The consultation then went on to deal with the 5 licensing objectives, asking whether you have any suggestions for promotion of each of the 5 licensing objectives, and responses received were pretty balanced out the 5 persons who responded to the consultation. You were also asking the members of the public, are there too many licensed premises over provision in Annandale and Eskdale? And in relation to on sales, 5 persons are of the view that there is no over provision of on sales, and in relation to off sales, 3 persons are of the view that no, and 2 persons stated no views. We then had a wee catch-all at the end of the consultation for any other views and comments, and the LSO came in with 2 responses there detailed at Appendix 3. So we may wish to bring in convener the LSO to speak to her responses. So I would suggest in managing this with your approval, of course, convener, if you want to go to the recommendations and go through each policy area for consideration, and the first being the licensed hours, it states that a majority of persons, 4 out of 5, are of the view that the current licensed hours are okay, so there's no need to increase or scale back those hours. So the recommendation is to consider whether you wish to retain existing on-sales licensed hours, reduce them or extend them. Thank you.
Okay, Caroline, thanks very much. So, members, is there any suggestions on this one? If not, I think we retain what we've got at the moment. Ian?
I agree with yourself, convener. Just retain status quo.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any other So Caroline, well with that one, okay with that one to keep it as is?
The decision to retain existing on-sales licensed hours is noted, convener. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the next one is outdoor drinking areas. And again, I don't see any reason why we should change the policy from it is at the moment. Anybody have any other feeling? Ian? Ian, you're on mute.
Apologies, convener. That was 5-minute script there. Just, is there any, what's the pros and cons in regards to, I mean, we've used this policy the way it is for quite a long time now, and it is very flexible, as been said, but is there any pros in regards to having a fixed policy, so to speak, that could be determined under delegated powers?
Caroline?
Thank you, convener. So you do not have a policy at present, members, so each case is determined on its own merits, depending on that specific application that comes before yourselves. If you were to develop a policy in relation to outdoor drinking areas, for example, you decided on a certain terminal hour for outdoor drinking areas, you had a policy in relation to the music within an outdoor drinking area, that would be published in the policy statement, and it would give applicants a heads up as to what to expect in relation to outdoor drinking areas. Answering specifically whether there is any kind of benefit to having a policy, you've never had a policy on the one hand, and it seems to have worked without any adverse issues arising because you deal with each case on its own merits. You're not fixed. So if you do get an application coming in for a rural, say a hotel in that rural location, you might not wish to impose a 10 p.m. terminal hour, for example, pursuant to public nuisance licensing objectives, because there's nobody living within the close proximity of that hotel, so it's worked quite well. If you have a policy, obviously it is more rigid, but then you know it is open for anybody to come before yourselves to argue an exception to that policy. But to date, you've never had a policy, and it's, as I say, it's worked, and you may wish to consider how well that's worked. Thank you.
Caroline, I'm about to get kicked out of my hotel in Belfast. So I understand what you're saying with the Councillor Carruthers earlier on, but this is talking about policy rather as an application. So is it all right to hand back to Councillor Carruthers on this occasion because it's talking about policy rather than an application?
Yeah, I have no problem with that, convener. We'll just note the time that, so you're handing convenership back to Councillor Carruthers to consider this.
Ian, are you okay with that?
Absolutely fine with that, Archie. That advice. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You leave for my plane now, so I'll catch you later.
Excellent. Thank you. Safe journey, Archie.
Cheers.
Thanks for home safe. No, so thanks very much for that answer as well, Caroline. It was an open question. You've answered it completely in as far as I was concerned, but I do think the current not having a policy is the best way. It's more flexible and gives us a chance to apply that local level of decision. George, you're looking to come in, Councillor Jimmerson?
Yeah, it's in a similar theme. I do agree flexibility is better because, you know, there's not a definitive issue here, but I just want to get some sort of reassurance that we do cover where people may have an objection. Even in a rural area, noise travels quite far. So it's really just so that flexibility is done in due consideration to all stakeholders in the area, because people maybe are quieter folk will maybe not complain, but they might complain to themselves in their own house. So as long as that flexibility is used sensibly, which I'm quite sure it is, I would agree that not having a policy is probably the best approach.
Thanks, George. Caroline, I just for reassurance for myself as well, but all these applications that come forward would come in front of the board anyways, so George would be able to participate.
That is the case, convener. If an application for a new premises licence comes in and it includes an outdoor drinking area, it comes before yourselves. If there's an application to vary an existing premises licence with the requested addition of an outdoor drinking area, that would come before yourselves.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So as far as making a decision, we've been asked, I think, to consider whether or not to adopt a policy in relation to outdoor drinking in the areas. And I think from what's been said, we're happy to leave it as a status quo. So are you comfortable enough with that, Caroline?
Just to say, convener, that's a decision for yourselves as a board, and if you can confirm your decision, it will be recorded. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. More than comfortable with that. George seemed to be the same. Any other member got any opposing view?
No, convener, all
No,
good.
No. Excellent, thank you. Thanks, Gail. So, Caroline, we'll leave it the status quo then for the record.
Noted. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Thanks very much. The next point is at 5.1.3. Caroline, are you leading in regards to this? Just so I'm up to speed.
If you wish me to do so, convener, I can, or if you wish to deal with this, I'm entirely in your hands. Do you wish me to read through the licensing objectives?
I think we're
Yep.
It's the same approach that we're using when Archie was here.
So in respect to the licensing objectives, all 5 licensing objectives, various suggestions are offered for their promotion. So you're asked to consider whether you wish to follow any of the suggestions offered in respect of promoting the licensing objectives. If you go to paragraph 4.9 of the report, that details the licensing objectives and responses that you received.
Thanks, Caroline. Members, have you got any particular points? 4.9 starts at page 72, I see. Here on. Any particular points that members are looking to pick up on here? I've only got an electronic version. Apologies, it takes me a lot longer to get through to the pages where they need to be. So we need to consider whether any suggestions offered in respect of promoting the licence objectives should be followed, members. I'm not picking up on anything, Caroline, in regards to that. So that will remain neutral for what I can see. If you can just... You picked that up as part of our decision-making process. I think if that's the case, then the 5.1.3 we've been asked to consider whether any suggestions offered in respect of promoting the licence objectives should be followed.
Convener, I can see Councillor Jameson has his hands up. I'm not sure if that's a legacy hand.
So he has. George, if that is that legacy.
No, it's not a legacy hand. One of the issues that concerns me, and whether it or not it's covered here, I'm not quite sure, but it's young folk again, or even older folk that they get intoxicated and they're at risk of harm. If we could promote the risks of alcohol beyond the obvious health issues, but health and welfare, I'm thinking of young people particularly coming out of pubs and nightclubs late on, and that they're worse for the wear of drink. It would be good if we could maybe promote that in schools and things, just to highlight the dangers of over drinking and not being able to look after yourself, basically. I don't know if that's covered by anything that we do. Obviously the health risks and public nuisance, all the rest of it are identified, but it's personal safety that concerns me. So young people can be at risk if they're go drink and walking about at night. So whether or not we can promote the dangers of that beyond the obvious risk of alcohol, it would be helpful, I think.
Thanks, George. Caroline?
Thank you, convener. So your statutory remit is regulation in terms of the sale of alcohol. In terms of going into schools or promoting kind of like public health agendas and personal safety, my view is that would be beyond your legal remit, members. However, clearly one of the licensing objectives is promoting and protecting and improving public health. That is a licensing objective. So if you have an application for a new premises licence that comes before you, and there is evidence before you that suggests that the granting of the application would be inconsistent with that licensing objective, then you are obliged in law to refuse that application. But in terms of kind of going into schools and teaching about public safety issues, that would be beyond your remit.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you very much for that, and that's something we can take up on the education side of things. So thanks for that clarity.
Thank you, George, for the point as well. So there's nothing at the moment. Is Licensing Standards Officer's first suggestion. Caroline, again, we'll come back to you to let you go through this, because that's the way Archie started it off. So I'd like to be consistent with this.
Yeah, no problem, Convener. So can I just confirm the decision in relation to the licensing objectives, that you're not following any of the suggestions detailed, and the reasons why? Is it your view that they're just quite sort of vague, some are beyond your remit? For example, some of them talk about policing extra police resources, that's beyond your remit, that's a matter for Police Scotland. So just to confirm that decision in relation to the licence objectives, you're not following any of the suggestions for the promotion from the 5 persons.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep. I don't see any of the members coming in, and obviously George has brought up his own point in regards to that of a similar basis, and we've covered that as well.
That's noted, Convener. Thank you. So moving on, Convener, you may wish to bring in the LSO here, Julia, who responded to the consultation. I can see Julia there. Thank you.
Julia, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Well, there really wasn't an awful lot to pick up on insofar as we were concerned. One thing we would have found useful if the towns that are subject to the bylaws regarding consumption of alcohol in a public place were listed. We often get asked by licensees and indeed members of the public, applicants for occasional licenses about this. So I just feel if they were all there in the one place, that would be a useful addition. The only other thing in relation to Annandale and Eskdale was a very minor tweak. The wording around refusals registers and incidents book is different from the other 3 boards, and I just wondered if the board might want to keep it consistent across the 4 boards, just meaning the same thing, but it just for sake of consistency. But apart from that, we had nothing other to add.
Thanks, Julia. That sounded absolutely fine to me, the 2 suggestions that you put forward. Members, are you any member otherwise minded in regards to that? So we'll get a correction or an alignment from the Annandale and Eskdale. I think it's a refusal register in the incident book. That'll read the same way as the other 3 boards across Dumfries and Galloway. And Julia, just remind us in regards to what was the first point? Try to take notes.
So,
around
the bylaws prohibiting consumption of alcohol in a public place, it was just to add the details of which towns are covered across Dumfries and Galloway.
So it's my connection here, Julia. I completely missed that.
Sorry, Convener. It was just around the bylaws prohibiting the consumption of alcohol in a public place, just to actually detail the towns that are covered for information.
Excellent. No. So Caroline, you then, Councillor Thompson. Caroline, you're wanting in?
Thank you, Convener. So you'll be holding a conjoined board meeting on the 6th of October of all 4 divisional licensing boards, and the draft policy statement will come before all 4 boards for members' approval for publication. I will be making some amendments to that policy statement for members' approval, of course, and contained within that new draft will be details of the bylaws as the LSO has requested. So that will come before the conjoined boards on the 6th of October. Thank you.
Right, no, thanks very much for that. So that covers that base, really. So just the one point in regards to refusal and writ register and incident book. Stephen, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, it was just around the bylaws, because I think this had been raised a wee while ago, just about how often we review these. So I take it there will be opportunities then for the likes of community consultation on that, out with what's been happening so far, because I think there was some interest in some of the traditional bylaws for some of the villages in Annandale and Eskdale, and some people might have other views on that, but I mean, it was just so that the public have an opportunity through community councils or whatever to give a response to that as well. Is that, it's just so in terms of process, Caroline, would that just be the one that comes to the conjoined meeting before it goes public, as it were?
Currently we have, first of all, licensing I've never actually dealt with bylaws. It's always been dealt with by legal services. So what we would be doing is we would be including the current bylaws within the licensing policy statement, if you approve that, of course. Fully aware, Councillor Thompson, that you have brought this up, the need to legally review the current bylaws that are in place. My understanding is that that is with legal. I'm unable to comment today as to how that has been progressed by legal, but I can certainly look into it for you and revert. I'm not entirely clear of the statutory process and consultation that it involves, because we've never dealt with it. It has been a matter for legal services. Are you happy for me to come back to you on that point once I take it up with the legal manager?
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Yep,
just
no
'cause,
problem.
I mean, if you're not sure, then can you imagine how unsure we are? So yes, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
I shall do, Councillor. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I think you're right in the money there with that last comment. I think did we cover this thing keeps flicking about 5.1.4 as well, I think. Or is it 5.1.5, sorry. Julia, did we cover that?
Convener, yes. You've agreed to go with the LSO's recommendations, which includes 5.1.5. So the next part the next step will be dealing with the second aspect of the review, and that is over provision. And with your approval, Convener, I can now go through the over provision, and you have Mr. Chris Allen and Mr. George Noakes from NHS Dumfries and Galloway in relation to that. Shall I just proceed, Convener?
Please, thank you.
So included in the review of the licensing policy statement, you'll be aware that you must also have a statement contained within it as to the extent to which you consider there to be over provision of licensed premises within your area. We underwent a consultation, and you'll recall that in your conjoined meeting in January this year, those who were consulted for the purposes of the over provision assessment were agreed, and those are detailed at Appendix 1. It was basically the same consultees. You'll also recall that at the last over provision assessment in 2018, you agreed that there was no over provision of licensed premises in Annandale and Eskdale. In terms of numbers for Annandale and Eskdale, in 2018, there were 6 more licensed premises collectively than there are in 2023. You'll note there's a table at paragraph 4.13.7 of the report on page 78 before yourselves. Without going into, you will recall that if you make a determination that it's over provision of licensed premises, then that is a ground of refusal, though it's a rebuttable presumption. Without me going into any more, what I will say is that the NHS Dumfries and Galloway have, in their opinion, stated that there is over provision in Annan West for on sales, and they are going to give a presentation in relation to their findings in that regard. And it was also just to say, Convener, that I am here also to give guidance and assistance as to what the law states in relation to over provision. I'm very, very happy to come in when you wish me to do so, to talk about the dependable causal link that must be proven in law between the availability of alcohol in a locality and alcohol related harm within that locality on the balance of probabilities. If you're happy, Convener, to allow Mr. Noakes and Mr. Allen to give their presentation as to over provision in their view of Annan West for on sales. Thank you.
Very happy for that to happen. No, thank you. Is it you first, George? Then Alan, or is it the other way around?
I'll be going first. Thank you, Convener. Good morning. And thank you for inviting us along to your board meeting. So, as been said, my name's Chris Allen, and I'm a consultant in public health for NHS Dumfries and Galloway. And I'm here on behalf of Valerie White, our Director of Public Health. And I'm here with George. I'll give you title, George.
Good morning, everyone. So for those that don't know me, I'm George Noakes. I'm the Assistant Performance and Intelligence Manager for NHS Dumfries and Galloway and Dumfries and Galloway Health and Social Care Partnership.
Thanks very much. So this presentation gives an overview of the full consultation response that's included in the meeting papers, but we also set the response in the context of the international and national picture and recent research on the topic to influence decisions. So Valerie's annual report gives a stocktake of the health of the population using the latest available data, highlighting key trends and issues. And this report showed that for the first time in what you might consider to be a long time, life expectancy is decreasing, while premature death and the burden of disease is increasing. And due to this, the demands on the health and social care system are expected to rise to levels never seen before. The report showed that the greatest health challenges are faced by those living in the most deprived areas, and this includes alcohol-related hospital admissions. People living in more deprived areas were more than twice as likely to be admitted to hospital for alcohol-related conditions than those living in the least deprived areas. The report concluded that if we're going to see positive change, we need to take systematic action, putting health promotion improvement and ill health prevention at the heart of policy and decision making. As we've stated here in the presentation slide, the NHS and licensing boards are duty bound by the same legislation to the same end, by legislation to the same end, and that's to protect and promote the improvement of the health of the local population. We recognise that alcohol is very much embedded in the world, while at the same time it's a substance listed in the UK database of poisons, that's Toxbase, and known to cause serious health and social problems. Given this complex relationship, we recognise that there's no one simple solution to end alcohol-related harms. However, it is in the gift of licensing boards to help control availability and access through the licensing provisions. This slide sets out some of the, Thanks, George. This slide sets out some of the evidence linking the availability of alcohol and alcohol-related harms at a population level. Adults in Scotland buy more alcohol than their counterparts in England and Wales, and the country suffered one of the highest levels of alcohol-related harm than neighbours in Western Europe. Recent research by Alcohol Focus Scotland and the Centre for Research on Environment, Society and Health has included three important findings for Dumfries and Galloway. The first is that neighbourhoods with more places to buy alcohol had higher alcohol-related hospitalisation rates than neighbourhoods with the least. Neighbourhoods with more places to buy alcohol had higher crime rates, and the most deprived neighbourhoods had more places to buy alcohol than the least deprived neighbourhoods. The above relationships were found even when other factors were taken into account, such as income, urban-rural status, and the age and sex structure of the population. So this means that the association between outlet availability and these outcomes was not explained by anything else that was taken into account in the research. And at this point, I'll hand over to George, who will give a detailed analysis of the data, including our submission.
Thanks, Chris. So my role within the Health Board is to lead a team that produces intelligence analysis. This is about bringing data from different sources together and trying to analyze that as a whole to tell it to understand what it can tell us. So when we were asked to have a look at alcohol over provision, we pulled together data from Dumfries and Galloway Council, ourselves at NHS Dumfries and Galloway, but also from official statistics providers such as PHS, Public Health Scotland, and National Records for Scotland. And we carried out this analysis in May and June 2023. There's nothing in life that's certain other than death and taxes, and that's very true for an intelligence analyst. We often have to talk in the world of probability and likelihood. And one of the tools that we use is the Professional Head of Intelligence Assessment, or PHIA, probability yardstick, to give us a consistency to our language when we're describing likelihood. And this is a tool that I will use throughout this presentation to try and keep that consistency and understandability. The other technical bit that I just want to highlight is our use of intermediate zones. I'm very aware that often within our area and within the local authority, planning is done according to council wards. However, council wards have are not as consistent across a long period of time due to the changing size of the population and certain reboundary drawings. What we tend to use at a national level and our official statistics providers use are areas called intermediate zones. There's 40 of these across Dumfries and Galloway. They were last revised in 2011 with the census in 2011. And each intermediate zone has between 2,500 and 6,000 residents living in them, providing a sufficiently large enough population to produce statistics with a good degree of rigour and robustness. We'll be looking at intermediate zones in due course. Just before I do, I'd like to highlight some overall trends in Dumfries and Galloway. First, on alcohol provision. Although the overall number of licence holders has not changed significantly over the last 5 years, going from 540 in 2018 to 530 in 2023, what we do see within that overall figure has been a slow but steady concentration of licence holders to our urban centres, particularly within Dumfries Town and Stranraer, but there are indications it's happening within Annan too. Overall, with regards to alcohol-related harms, Dumfries and Galloway has had a history of consistently being better than Scotland across a range of alcohol harm indicators. However, there are some worrying signs that are emerging that this is now changing, and I've just picked out 2 for you this morning. The first one is the age sex standardised rate for alcohol-related admissions for young people and young adults. This is those aged 11 to 25. Comparing Dumfries and Galloway to Scotland. As you can see, from 2012 to 2016-17, Dumfries and Galloway pretty much had a similar rate to the rest of Scotland. However, 2017-2018 onwards, Dumfries and Galloway's rate rose above that of the Scottish average. The last 2 points on this chart are impacted by the pandemic, and we know that social restrictions such as lockdowns prevented, especially amongst young people, the chance to socialise and the opportunities with which to purchase or drink, consume alcohol. What we do anticipate that it is highly likely, in fact almost certain, so that's a 95% chance or greater, that the pattern we saw just before the pandemic will resume in the data now that those social restrictions have been lifted. The other indicator that is of concern is the age-sex standardised rate for alcohol-specific deaths across Dumfries and Galloway. So these deaths are from causes such as liver cirrhosis or acute alcohol intoxication. Although Dumfries and Galloway continues to be well below the rate for Scotland, there are 2 parts that I'd just like to highlight here. The first is this chain between 2015 and 2020. What you can see here is 5 consecutive dots, each one higher than the previous. So from a statistical perspective, the chances of this happening by random is less than 5%, which means that 19 times out of 20, when we see a pattern like this, it means that there is something structural happening within the system or within the community. The last 2 dots on here again are impacted by the pandemic, but to add to our concern, just over a week ago, National Records Scotland produced the latest death numbers for alcohol-specific deaths, and they showed a 44% increase across Dumfries and Galloway between 2021 and 2022 in these rates. So once age-sex standardisation has happened, we are almost certainly going to see the pattern that we had before the pandemic resume in this data. Moving on to the analysis by local areas, we looked at 8 measures across all our intermediate zones, 2 measures on alcohol premises, rates per 100,000 population, 2 measures on alcohol capacity. These were included for context. Capacity is not as specific a measure because although there may be, shops might not utilise the 100% of their shelf space, for instance. And then 4 measures on alcohol-related harm. Hospital admissions, alcohol-related emergency attendances, alcohol-specific deaths, and criminal offences. Each intermediate zone was looked at, and the average, and then compared to the average rate for Dumfries and Galloway and for Scotland, bearing in mind what Chris has said earlier, that Scotland is not very good compared to Western Europe. In fact, it's one of the worst performing countries with respect to alcohol-related harms. The results were then underwent a statistical significance test again at that 95% level, which means that we are almost certain when we identify an area that is high. And then for over provision, we set two conditions: one where the measure of alcohol premises is high, and one where the measure of alcohol harm is high. So if an area, an intermediate zone, met both of those conditions, we concluded that there was over provision of alcohol. In addition, where it was high for alcohol-related harm, but not high for provision, we highlight these areas as an area of concern. Moving into the charts, here you can see that we have all 40 intermediate zones across Dumfries and Galloway, and in an approximate west to east order. It is approximate, so it's not, it's as best as we can do. Annandale and Eskdale is on the right-hand side there, shaded in blue. And for on-sales premises, you can see that we have Moffat and Annan West both above the Scotland and Dumfries and Galloway average. For off-sales premises per head of population, there are no areas in Annandale and Eskdale that were highlighted as high. With regards to capacity, on-sales capacity, Annandale West, Moffat, Moffat, Annan West and Gretna were all identified as higher than the average. For off-sales capacity, Lockerbie, Annan West and Gretna were identified as higher than the average. So in our summary table, there's just Moffat and Annan West there with one measure for alcohol premises and a few there for alcohol capacity. Moving on to alcohol-related harms, for hospital admissions that are alcohol-related, just Annan West was higher than the average for Dumfries and Galloway, although it should be noted that it was similar to the average for Scotland. The rate for alcohol-related A&E attendances, there were no areas in Annandale and Eskdale that were higher than the Dumfries and Galloway average. For alcohol-specific deaths, again, there were no areas in Annandale and Eskdale. And finally, for rates of drunkenness and other disorderly conduct, just Annan West was found to be higher than the Dumfries and Galloway average. Therefore, popping this into our chart, you can see that we have just Annan West with measures of alcohol-related harm, and therefore, because they have both alcohol premises are high and alcohol-related harms are high, we've identified this area as over-provided. In summary, from the intelligence assessment, there is a long-term trend concentrating licensed premises to our urban centres of Dumfries and Stranraer. There are signs that alcohol harms have started to increase across Dumfries and Galloway. These trends are almost certainly occurring and are likely to resume following the pandemic. And within Annandale and Eskdale itself, Annan West was found to have statistically significantly higher results for both provision and alcohol harm. Across all 8 measures, it was high for 4 out of the 8, and it is highly likely, greater than an 80% chance in our view, that Annan West is experiencing an over-provision of alcohol. There were no other areas within Annandale and Eskdale identified as an area of concern. I'm just going to pass to Chris for the final slide.
Thanks very much, George. So in terms of conclusions then, the results of the analysis have suggested that there was evidence of over-provision in Annan West, and as such it's been recommended that the licensing board limits approving new applications to support reducing the impact of alcohol-related harms in this area. In terms of governance, the recommendations in the over-provision assessment report have been supported by the Public Health Committee in NHS Dumfries and Galloway and the Alcohol Drug Partnership. In terms of the wider context, we think we're witnessing an increase in alcohol-related admissions for younger people, in alcohol-specific deaths, and there's also emerging evidence that drinking at home has become more normalised as a consequence of the pandemic and the stay-at-home measures. Taking into account the over-provision assessment, the Public Health Committee acknowledged that there are other means by which licensing can influence behaviours such as promoting best practice within the licensing trade. Within the licensed trade. So thank you very much, convener. We're happy to take any feedback, comments or questions.
Thanks very much for that presentation. It was absolutely excellent. Don't see any hands coming up as of yet, but when I seen them off, it had a big question mark in regards to why it was so high when it comes to the the capacity, but then actually when it came to harm, and that was explained out because there was no real harm being done, then it wouldn't fall into the same category. But that was the kind of burning question for myself. But Councillor McGregor, Gail.
Thanks, convener. It's maybe a question for Caroline as well. When you requesting that we limit the number of applications going forward to try and sort of manage the over provision, what would the limit be? Would there be a strict parameter of only 2 per year or 10 per year? Or it's maybe a question for Caroline, because I don't know how we would limit or what we would limit to.
Thanks for that question, Councillor. If I can just, if I may just wind back a wee bit rather than talking about limits. First of all, if you make any assessment on over provision must be evidence-based. There must be evidence before you today that alcohol availability in Annan West for on sales is a cause of alcohol harm in Annan West, and it's an evidence-based approach. If you make a determination based on the evidence before you that there is over provision in Annan West, as suggested by NHS Dumfries and Galloway, or in any other locality, but NHS Dumfries and Galloway are only stating Annan West for on sales, then that would be a ground of refusal moving forward. It would be prospective. It would mean that if an application came before you for any on sales or off sales within that locality, Annan West, you would refuse that application on the ground of over provision. It would be a rebuttable presumption. It would be telling prospective businesses that Annan West is being deemed to be over provided for. Now, at this juncture, if I may, if you could turn your attention to paragraph 5.2 of this over provision assessment at page 116. The law states that it must be evidence-based and you must have a dependable causal link between the availability of alcohol in a locality, in this case Annan West, and alcohol-related harm in that locality. The question that you must ask yourselves is, where is, okay, if there's alcohol-related harm within Annan West that's higher, that has higher rates, where is the alcohol coming from? And the limitations in the NHS Dumfries Galloway assessment on page 116, there's 2 caveats here. If you go to the 3rd paragraph, it states that this report does not include figures for online alcohol sales for websites such as Amazon. There is no way to measure the impact of online sales on levels of alcohol availability and alcohol-related harm. The 2nd caveat is that it's likely that some residents will buy alcohol from premises in England where there's no minimum unit pricing. So of course we know that alcohol is generally cheaper in England. So the issue you have here is that you don't know where the alcohol is being purchased. It may not necessarily be purchased in Annan West. Post-pandemic consumer practice, more and more people are purchasing online, out with Annan West, out with Annandale and Eskdale, out with Dumfries and Galloway, possibly even out with Scotland. They're purchasing online, and there's no way to quantify those online sales, and the NHS Dumfries and Galloway has specifically stated that in that assessment. So you don't know where the alcohol is coming from. And secondly, you do not know whether people within Annan West or any other locality within your area are purchasing the alcohol from England across the border, Carlisle perhaps, where the alcohol is cheaper. So in terms of evidence, you've got 2 caveats here that you don't know where this alcohol is being purchased. Do you have evidence before you to prove that this alcohol is being purchased within Annan West? And the assessment here, they're saying you don't. And also in relation to your requirement to take into account capacity in your assessment, because you know post-pandemic trends that alcohol is being purchased online, and you cannot quantify how much alcohol is being purchased online. There's therefore a capacity gap within this policy statement, and that's not the fault of NHS Dumfries and Galloway. They don't know how much of the alcohol is being purchased online. Therefore, capacity is called into question in terms of this policy statement. You're basing a policy on capacity on the one hand, but you don't know how much capacity is coming from these online sales. So it is a very, very difficult endeavour. The statutory guidance says it must be an evidence-based approach, but if you cannot answer where this alcohol is coming from, then my view is that it's challengeable.
Are you okay with that, Gail?
Thanks for that, Karen. Yeah, that's clear. Thank you.
We'll maybe come back to NHS just at the end, just to maybe any points that have been brought up here, if you have a counter to that, or even a point you'd like to make. George, then Stephen. So Councillor Jimison, then Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ian. Thanks for the presentation. It's very, very insightful, but I do take on board the complexity of it all that's just been explained. But my first question is, Annan West, does that take in Annan the town, and what else? And my next question, and again, it's based on previous comments there. You know, over provision, it's always been something that's bothered me sitting as a new with the privilege of making these decisions, or that it's very difficult to see what over provision is. A lot of young folk now have to predicate this, but there's less young people drinking now, but I'm more concerned about the ones that do and go to excess, and then, as we know, a lot of the people have got alcohol problems are older people. But if you want the young people, I'll get a case or two of lager or something easy and drink it at home and then go to the pub. So that's very hard to define as well. But it's a common, kids watching their money, they'll get drunk on cheap stuff and then they'll go to the pub afterwards and buy the odd expensive drink. So that's clearly an issue that complicates it even more. But I mean, we're asked to make a decision, for example, as we did today, on premises expanding or bringing a restaurant that provides food and then drink. That probably is less risky, but it's another provision of alcohol. The pubs are different. It's often regulars that go there. So it's a very complex situation, and I'm not sure how we define provision other than the guidance we got from the legal side of it. But first of all, is it Annan the town that's largely Annan West? And secondly, how do we overcome the statistical challenges of where do people get their drink? Even if there was no off licenses in Annan, they go to Tesco at the supermarket and get everything they wanted. So it's highly complex.
Sorry, George, my mic was off. Just come in, George.
Thank you, convener. So with regards to Annan West, there are two intermediate zones for the town of Annan, and they fairly discreetly isolate the settlement of Annan from the surrounding countryside. So Annan West is one of those two intermediate zones around Annan town. With regards to the statistical challenges of meeting the thresholds, I suppose there's a couple of arguments that I would put forward. As a health board, we argued the over-provision in areas across Dumfries and Galloway back in 2018. Our position hasn't changed in the 5 years, and alcohol purchasing across the internet and even the minimum pricing unit weren't in place at that point. So this is a pattern that we've seen consistently. What I do know from the guidance that accompanies the licensing, the Licensing 2005 Act, is that it does say that there is no numerical threshold by which to judge whether there is over provision, and I suppose this is where your understanding of your local communities and how they work and how they operate in conjunction with the data that we are providing today and our assessment, you bring that to the table in making that determination. So I don't really have a statistical get out of jail free card on this one. It is difficult, it is tricky, and we do acknowledge and understand that. We understand that there are things that we might not be able to grant over provision today or make that determination. We understand that, but we really would welcome the opportunities to work with licensing boards across the region to further those public health objectives of preventing harm to our populations.
I'll just come back in. Yeah, I'm not undermining in any way the importance and the value of your work, and I'm totally on board with it. The difficulty we have, as I say, is if somebody wanted to open a new facility in Annan who had the best standards, a high level of responsibility, etc., it would be difficult to turn that down on the basis of the other pubs in Annan are already there, and they may not be of the same standard of responsibility. So it becomes quite subjective, but we'll have to be cognizant of the fact that the professionals think there's an over provision. So it's our job to try and manage that within our own area, within the legal requirements that Caroline covers. So, but thanks for that, and I'm no way am I trying to undermine the efforts that you're putting into it.
If my understanding is correct, just before you come in, Caroline, George, Annan West, going by the old ward boundaries, that is Brykirk, Newby, south of the High Street in Annan, and pretty much up through Tweedy Terrace and everything to the left of that in regards to towards the River Annan, if that's the same kind of. So it does cover, imagine you've got over provision in Annan West, you apply for the Briginn, so to speak. George and I are both local to that area in Brykirk, but you're getting refused on the grounds of it's an over provision in Annan West, thinking it's Annan High Street. I think that's correct, George.
We're doing our bit. There's no pub in Brykirk now.
I know. This look, it's got over anytime soon. Caroline, I think you're wanting in on that point, though.
Thank you, Convener. It was just to state that separate to your legal duty to undertake the over-provision assessment, just to recall that when you do receive an application for a new premises licence, one of the statutory consultees in relation to that application is the NHS, so we do pass the application to the NHS for their input. And you'll also recall that protecting and improving public health licensing objective, if you receive an application where there is evidence before you that states that the granting of that premises licence application would be inconsistent with the licensing objective of protecting and improving public health, you would be obliged in law to refuse that application, of course, if there was evidence before yourselves. That is separate to this assessment, of course, but it's just to remind you that the protecting and improving public health licensing objective is relevant to, obviously, new premises licence applications as a ground of refusal if there was evidence before you, and the NHS are a statutory consultee in relation to new premises licences. So it's just to draw that to your attention. And also, once we get the licensing forum up and running, the NHS will be a member of that forum, and you will be obliged at least once a year to have meetings with the licensing forum with a view to kind of partnership working and sharing information and a recommendation and ideas. And we are in the process of looking to get that forum up and running so that the NHS can feel that they have possibly more input here. Just to draw that to your attention, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Very appropriate, I think, bringing that point up. So as well as the point you brought up with Gail earlier, in regards to the online and such like, but I think it's only there for if we were to agree, which I don't think we will, but if we were to agree over provision, it's one of the reasons for refusal on top of what we've got already. But actually, going back to the point you just made, George, I think NHS, Dumfries and Galloway Health Social Care Partnerships, so to speak, will have they've been fully consulted with, and we'll see that information on every application that comes in front of us. Councillor Thompson. Stephen, you're next.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, so I think this isn't the first time we've had this type of discussion, and I think while it sounds like there's data that says, yeah, there's an issue with overconsumption of alcohol, I think with Caroline's advice, if the test is in terms to be sort of legally safe, that you have to show a causal link, then it's almost like being set a task which is really impossible to prove, given if that's the only or the sort of most prudent measure by which to sort of test it. So as a licensing board, or through what vehicle can we, or could we say, well, can we review how this is being tested? Because if the test's impossible to meet, given the reality of how many places you can purchase alcohol online in any community, it has very little, arguably, bearing on what actual on sales there are potentially, then it's sort of like it's really sort of an impossible scenario. So the NHS will always advise, if in the evidence they've got, there's an alcohol concern here, and we will always have to say, yeah, well, legally we can't prove where it came from. So so that's a sort of, how do we get past that? And is there a way that we can make that representation through to the right channels to say, can you adjust, amend, or review the legislation that makes that test the test we have to listen to? Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I think, Caroline, you're coming in to answer that.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Yeah, I can't recall. You're the fourth divisional board that we've had, so I can't recall which board has asked me to raise it with Solar. But just to confirm that I shall be raising this matter with Solar colleagues, with a view to asking them whether they're actually happy to raise this with the Scottish Government, not just the complexities in relation to the over-provision assessment, but the legal difficulties in proving that causal link, given the onset of explosion of online alcohol sales, more people drinking at home, which is out with the board's regulation, specific to Dumfries and Galway, possibly the availability easier, more easy to go and buy alcohol in England where there's no minimum unit pricing, that can actually pose, all of these are relevant factors that make this a very, very complex matter. So I shall be raising it with Solar, and I shall be asking Solar if they can put together a paper to put to the Scottish Government, and I can keep you, of course, in the loop in that regard. We do have a Solar meeting a week today. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to attend it. I always attend them, but I do have a licensing panel next Friday. The timings can overlap that wee bit, so I may be able to attend part of that Solar meeting, but we do meet 4 times a year, and I shall be raising it with them. But it would be, you're correct, it is a matter for the Scottish Government, Councillor Thompson, in terms of it is their legislation to review, amend, or otherwise.
Just before you come in, Stephen, I was going to say Chris is wanting in, I think, probably on the same point. Chris? You're on mute, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, convener, and thank you, Caroline. Yes, I think we welcome that opportunity to have the legislative burden of evidence taking up in conversation, but I think likewise I'd welcome a conversation as well, an ongoing conversation about what the strength of evidence is from a, say, a health point of view, or from a legal challenge point of view as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Chris. I don't think I've got any other members voting in, but I think
is it okay to come back,
conveners? Absolutely, Stephen. Sorry, Stephen. Absolutely, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Thanks, Caroline. I welcome that. I think the mild concern is, okay, how do we track where that goes, other than continuing to perhaps ask for it to be raised, and appreciating that the advent of the licensing forum might provide better places to sort of have these conversations. It still remains that until something changes legislatively, that is the sort of the point at which we can't cross the bridge, or cross the river. So there's that kind of until that's, otherwise we're dancing around and agreeing on things that we have a care for that relate to public health, as it were, and our own communities, but yet that barrier is still there. So and it's not like the internet's new, or that alcohol is new, or that the public health concerns haven't been raised many years ago, and we've had a whole lockdown experience to sort of really practice buying alcohol online. So that there's kind of it's the agility and fleetness of foot, if you like, or fleetness of feet of the legislation to actually keep up with its own priorities. So I think that's maybe public health clearly is primary for many of us, and it's perplexing that it's taken so long for this to actually go through some process of review, if indeed that's happening now. So I'd really welcome that, Caroline, but if we can keep track of where that goes to and what happens next, that'd be even better. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen, and Caroline's nodding, obviously, in the background there. So going back to the decision we're here to make at 5.1.6, I mean, Caroline, maybe go back to yourself, but I mean, it looks fairly straightforward in regards to the advice that you've given us, but I wonder if you just remind us, it looks like with the take into consideration online sales, cross-border, even going into Europe, you get the booze van, so to speak, but there's all sorts of different ways in which to purchase or obtain alcohol with the premises within the Annan West area. I would find it difficult myself personally to say that at this moment in time, with evidence we've got in front of us, there was an over provision in Annan West, but ultimately there's been a lot of points brought up, and Stephen, I think yours is probably in regards to if it ever was to be the case that there would be an over provision, whether it was in Annan, Dumfries, or I think Dumfries maybe has got some, I certainly has got some, but whatever it is for us actually in Randale and Estill, that the correct evidence is presented that we can then make that determination from a legal standpoint, if that was the case. But Caroline, I'll just come back to you in regards to, I don't think any other members coming in regards to, I think in particular the advice that you gave us, we wouldn't really have the force of information in regards to make a statement of over provision in this case.
So, Convener, just to state obviously clearly, it is a matter for yourselves as elected members to make a determination as to whether there is over provision of licensed premises on sales in Annan West. But I must draw to your attention the paragraph 5.2 limitations that are detailed in NHS's assessment specifically state that the report does not include figures for online alcohol sales. And so there's no way to measure the impact of online sales on levels of alcohol availability and alcohol-related harm. And then the second point being that some residents are purchasing alcohol across the border in England where there's no minimum unit pricing. So the question for yourselves is if there is alcohol-related harms in Annan West for on sales, you need to, in law, have evidence to prove that those alcohol-related harms are directly, there is a dependable causal link to the availability of alcohol in that locality in Annan West. And the relevant factors here are you don't know where the alcohol is being purchased from. So on the one hand, if alcohol is being purchased out with the locality, whether it's in England, whether it's elsewhere, whether it's online, why should a new premises licence application, perhaps for a food-led premises, such as a really well-run restaurant, take the hit if it wants to open up in Annan West and be told you've decided that there's over-provision, you've decided that alcohol-related harms are linked to availability of alcohol in Annan West, so they're going to be refused on the grounds of over-provision, a really well-led food-based premises, when you know that on sales are not being taken into account in this formula, and also that people are purchasing alcohol in England and elsewhere. So therefore you need to ask yourselves, does this call into question, are these statistics fully dependable in law, because you do have the two stated caveats, and there is no numerical formula in determining over provision, and it is a very complex area.
I agree with that. So in regards to your statement stroke advice at the same time, I'm happy to propose that we don't make an over provision as part of our policies in Annan West in particular, has been outlined here. The next stage is there any other places we may consider there's over provision? Is the next part after that? And again, based on the information and advice that we've received, I would propose that there's not. Moffat's almost there, you could say, in the line with Annan, but the harm side of that's not there. In 5.2, note that a report will be placed before all four boards at a conjoint meeting to be held on 6th of October, as Caroline's already outlined earlier, requesting all four boards to agree the final terms of the statement of licensing policy, including the over provision assessment 23 to 28. Everybody happy with that? Are you content with that as well, Caroline?
So, Convener, just if I could just confirm your decision of the board, is it the case that the boards is of the mind that there is no over provision of on sales in Annan West or in any other locality within Annandale and Eskdale, and the reasons are, as you've stated, because you cannot quantify the cross-border sales, the online sales, and you've also made reference to even purchasing alcohol in the EU. So again, out with the locality, you cannot quantify that. Okay, so I'll just state that. I can see Councillor Jameson's got his hand up, convener.
Thank you.
I don't want to be awkward, but can we definitively say there is no over provision? We can say that there's not comprehensive evidence to suggest that there isn't, or there's no definitive evidence, but there's clearly a risk that there's over provision. We can't definitively say that there is no over provision in Annan West. At least I would suggest that would be the case. So I would like to qualify it that there's insufficient evidence on the basis of online and all that sort of argument. But I think it's a bit, from a legal perspective, I don't know, but I would be uncomfortable to say that we can categorically say there is no over provision.
Carly?
If you're in agreement that there is no, if you want to say that there's not sufficient evidence on the basis of the online sales, the cross-border sales, that you cannot quantify where the alcohol is coming from to suggest that there's no over provision, you can state that, and that will be included in the policy statement. So you want to state that there's not sufficient evidence to suggest that there's over provision on the basis of the cross-border sales, online sales, purchasing alcohol from even possibly Europe, which is you cannot quantify, and that's your reason. Is that the decision?
I'm much more comfortable with that, and your very clear explanation suggests that as well. So that's just my opinion. I'll hand it over to other councillors, but I think that's a more accurate. I don't want to dodge the issue and say that there is. We definitely think there is no over provision, because we can't categorically say that. Anyway, your statement, Caroline, that you just explained, I would support that. But over to you, convener.
If everybody else is comfortable with that, George, I think we will be as well. But I felt, over to you, Caroline, but I mean, I felt very much the case was there had to be clear evidence to prove that there was an over provision, and we've made it clear. We've maybe covered this already. We've made it clear that whereby we've had a presentation, and it does show in particular in regards to capacity and harm, that in Annan West, those indicators are there to show that the potential is over provision, but because of the other reasons outlined, online, cross-border, potentially Europe, so on and so forth, that we've the clear evidence, the evidence is not strong enough what was presented to us today to show that these were being bought. That is what's causing this. The locals, come back to Caroline's outline, the local premises are providing, are causing the sales to people who are causing harm, over capacity, so on and so forth. So I thought we had to prove, I may be picking this up wrong because sometimes I can when it comes to this stuff, but to prove that there wasn't over provision, but have we got the evidence to show that clearly? But Caroline, I'll just come back to yourself because nobody else is coming in. It's just really George and myself on this one in regards to making a decision, but I have to go with the proposal that George has put forward.
Okay, thank you, convener. So you must include within your policy statement a statement as to the extent to which you think there's over provision of licensed premises in your locality. So it's just to confirm my understanding before I go to NHS, that the board, your statement will state that there's not sufficient evidence to suggest that there is over provision of licensed premises in Annan West for on sales or in any other locality, on the basis that it's difficult to quantify where the alcohol is coming from due to online sales, cross-border sales and possible purchases of alcohol from Europe. So your statement is that there's no over provision. But again, when this does come to the conjoined board for members' final approval on the 6th of October, you will be given another opportunity, members, to approve the suggested wording. But your statement is that there is no over provision. Is that, and that's the decision of the board today, just before I confirm it with the NHS convener.
Okay, I'm very comfortable with that, what you've just said there, if that was...
And there's no other hand up from any other member.
Don't see any.
Right.
Did you want NHS got any comments, did you say?
So Mr Allen and Mr Noakes, the decision of the board today is that there's not sufficient evidence before them to suggest that there's over-provision of licensed premises in Annan and West for on sales or in any other locality on the basis that it's difficult to quantify where the alcohol is coming from due to the online sales, cross-border sales and possible purchases of alcohol from Europe. That your over-provision assessment will be contained within the policy statement for all 4 boards, and I shall be raising with my colleagues at Solar the difficulties surrounding the over-provision assessment, and ask them if they're in agreement with raising the issue with the Scottish Government. And we are looking to get the licensing forum up and running. I'm not sure where we are with that at the moment. It is a council function, but I do understand that it is in the process of being up and running, and of course you would be represented on that forum and meet with the board at least once per year. And of course you are statutory consultees in relation to any new premises licence applications in any event. I'm not sure whether we're actually going to, I don't know if Sharon or Davidson, our licensing managers, can come in. Sharon, was it the case that consideration was being given to sending the new applications to perhaps a different individual at the NHS, or?
Caroline, sorry, it's Cheryl. Sharon's had to leave the board meeting.
Beg your pardon, okay. So, I can pick up with that. I can get back. Thanks for that, Cheryl. I can pick up with that, Mr Allen and Mr Noakes, with Sharon Davidson, the licensing manager, as to who, because you are consultees. The NHS Dumfries and Galloway is a very large beast, a bit like the council, so it may be that you would want maybe a different individual to be notified as a statutory consultee. I'll find out from Sharon Davidson, our licensing manager, which individual is actually being consulted with, and whether you wish it to be a different individual, if that's something you'd like us to look at.
I think, Chris, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks very much, convener. Yeah, if we can take those conversations outside that meeting, we'll sort out who'll be the nominated representative. I'd just like to say thank you to the board for inviting us along and hearing our presentation and taking full account of the evidence and recognising that there are indicators of harm in Annan West, and also recognising the legislative difficulties in proving the burden of harms associated with availability as well, and look forward to those developing conversations.
Thank you very much for that, Chris, and thank you to yourself and George for coming and presenting today. It's very much appreciated, and it was an excellent presentation, really good actually, and with the level of questions and involvement, hopefully that's quite clear to yourselves as well. You'll be welcome any time in this type of scenario. Caroline, just in regards to the decision that we've made, I think we've covered all bases now. You outlined earlier, and what will go back to the October meeting. And I think the 5.2 was just to note anyways, the fact that there is a further conjoined meeting on the 6th of October.
That's correct, convener. It's just for noting. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I think give me a month to get back to me. I think that's it, members, for today. So if it is the case, I'm sure it is, I've got my agenda now, which it is. Next meeting date is Friday the 1st of December. I really do appreciate everybody's involvement today, and apologies again for myself having to leave the meeting for that 15-20 minutes when I did. But anyways, it's carried on and it's worked really well. Thanks very much, members, and for all your input today as well. Thank you.